jibber jab, bamboozle, nuka noozle, bippity bop, she-gall. You jibber jab, bamboozle, nuka noozle, bippity bop, she-gall. I mean, you keep on talking, but you don't know where to turn it off.
Except C. All right, we're chatting. I'm Jon Caldara. Glad to have you. I'm the president of the Independence Institute. You're watching Independent Thinking. Notice the pin. I'll do this. Notice the pin. I want my Rocky. Joining me, the editor of the Rocky Mountain News, that paper that's been around for almost 150 years, and you look no older than 120, so I'm glad to have you. Jon Temple from the Rocky.
Thanks for having me, John.
Right. You've been on the show. We do this pretty regularly enough to just talk about news. Usually I have you on and bash you over the head about the liberal bias of your paper and when you're going to fix it.
That's true.
And instead of doing that, which by the way is still completely true, I want to talk
completely true. No, come on.
You got a great editorial page. I'll give you that. Don't.
There's a lot of reporting.
Do you want to get into this, or are you going to take the compliment when it comes?
Okay.
But instead of doing that,
I
want to talk about the future of the Rocky Mountain News, the paper that I grew up with, the paper that I think is so connected to this community. And at the end of last year, when the word came out that you might only have a month or so to survive, that your parent company was going to sell you.
Yeah.
I mean, that hit this community, at least it hit me, as a real gut punch. And I mean, I remember growing up with this paper, taking out the mini page and doing the connect the dots. I mean, it's been around. Let me take one thing first. I think a lot of people are taking good feeling in this. You know, that's what you get for putting out a liberal paper. You're gonna get out. Let me be the first one to say that's not what's causing this. I don't care if this was Fox News on newsprint. The way the paper business has gone, it has changed. And tell me if I've got this right. The bread and butter of your business has traditionally been the want ads, and people are now going to the internet on that. It's just
a highly profitable section of our business was classifieds. It was very lucrative. We really owned the franchise, and it's essentially dissolved. It's evaporated, and it's a huge amount of money. Scripps publicly said that since the JOA began, the partnership between the Rocky and the Post, we've lost $100 million in classified revenue. That's per year, like year over year. So we have $100 million less in just that area of revenue. I mean, it's hard to make up $100 million.
And that's one of the reasons we've got the incredible shrinking paper over the years. Let's be honest about that. The paper keeps getting tinier and tinier and tinier.
Yes, it does. But there are tricks to that, John. For example, I'll tell you, when I became...
But if you use a magnifying glass, it looks bigger.
A telescope. You know, when I became editor in 1998, we ran 7.5 pages of stock listings. I'm not kidding. 7.5 pages. Today we run 1. Do you miss those 6.5 pages of stock listings? That's the kind of way...
My bird died and I don't need those pages. Yeah, no, I understand.
And you know, we took out things like a daily TV listings page. Who needs TV listings when you've got a guide right on your screen? So we've taken steps to eliminate things that I think are kind of commodity content that don't have the value.
But you had to because you needed to get a smaller paper.
We absolutely had to because the cost of newsprint, we needed to save money.
All right, let's get into the beef of this. We're recording this a few days before it airs. Every day I wake up and I see the Rocky there on my driveway. And by the way, I'm always surprised it's not on the top of my house anymore. So thank you for that. And I'm saying, is this the last day of the Rocky? Is this the last week of the Rocky? And I know you're not privy to what's going on behind closed doors, but I've visited your newsroom. You've got a lot of great people there. And there is a morbid feeling down there. I think that's the right way to do it.
Yes.
To lose the paper that's been around for 150 years, what do you think is going to happen? Give me the behind-the-scenes scoop.
Well, you know, when I try to tell people in my newsroom, and we hold a weekly meeting every Thursday where I talk to the staff and I tell them the best as possible what I know and what I think is going to happen. And what I keep reminding people is there's many parties in this dance and that it's very complicated. And I don't know the answer. But you know that there's the Rocky Mountain News and its owners. There's the Media News, the owner of the Denver Post.
Which is basically a guy named Dean Singleton.
Dean Singleton, basically. There's the Justice Department, which has an interest in Denver because we have an antitrust exemption known as the JOA that allows us to merge our business operations. There's banks. These banks are owed $130 million, and it's been pretty clear from stories in our own newspaper that we can't pay. And finally, there's unions. I mean, there are employees. And then if you think about it, there's two more major parties, readers and advertisers. But let's just stick with Justice Department, banks, the two owners, and unions. Singleton has asked for $20 million in concessions. We don't know if he's going to get them from the unions.
From his union at the Denver Post.
At the Denver Post and at the Denver Newspaper Agency. Okay. So he's asked for $20 million.
And again, for those people who don't get, there's the Post, there's the News, but when it comes to operations, circulation, advertising, going out and getting people to advertise, all that's done together. But the newsrooms and the editorial rooms, completely separate. And let me say this. When that happened 8 years ago, I thought for sure this was the kiss of death for both papers. I've been pleasantly surprised the competitive spirit among the newsrooms that both want to scoop the other. They're still, you know, kip and sing about that
absolutely,
reporter.
Absolutely.
I've been really surprised by that.
Even if you look, John, if you think about how we cover the story, the Rocky has been far more aggressive in covering the sale of the Rocky and the eventual what the eventual outcome in Denver could be than the Post has been. And I think that is largely because we recognize that our readers are going to be most affected. If the Rocky were to be closed, it affects Rocky readers more than it affects anybody else. It has a ripple effect and affects the whole community. But it really affects the Rocky. So we've reported that the banks won't lend the agency any more money. That we're in very tight financial
Help me understand this. So
okay.
You've got Scripps, which owns the Rocky.
And it's funding the Rocky newsroom right now.
Funding the Rocky newsroom.
Funding the Rocky newsroom. It doesn't get any money from the Denver Newspaper Agency anymore because the Denver Newspaper Agency does not spin off enough money to pay for the newsroom. So literally, Scripps every month is investing almost a couple of $1 million to pay the costs of our newsroom in Denver.
Okay. Then you've got the Post, which also has a right of refusal. That's Singleton.
That's
if you guys go on the block, and let's say you and I make a deal, and with Scripps, and say, I'm going to buy it for $10 million. Yep. Dean Singleton has the right to say, I'm matching that, and by contract, you've got to give it to me.
That's correct. He could make that assertion. The question will be, at that point, what does the Justice Department say about the anti-competitive aspect of that? And I don't have the answer. I'm not a lawyer.
My guess is, given the state of newspapers collapsing all over the country, I would imagine they would be just fine with that if it keeps the paper going.
That's a fair surmise, and I would say that conventional wisdom says that's what's going to happen. But one thing we've seen is who expected the Arizona Cardinals, who were described as the worst team to ever make the playoffs. Well, they played the Pittsburgh Steelers pretty darn well on Sunday, and they almost won the Super Bowl. So I agree that the most likely scenario is the one you just described, but I have no idea what's going to happen.
Tell me, are there any serious offers on the table to purchase the Rocky Mountain News? The deadline for those offers
was January 16th.
16th, long since come and gone, but I haven't heard if there was one or not.
Here's how I describe it to my staff, that over time I've learned that an offer to buy is a little more complicated than going into the grocery store and saying, I'll have the milk. I might come to you and say, you know, John, I'm really interested. I love that paper. That's a good paper. I'm interested. Now give me more information, and I want more information, and let's talk, and blah, blah, blah. And it comes down to the 7th hour.
Slow courtship. Is it fair for me to speculate that if Scripps, your parent company, is throwing in, did you say $2 million a month to keep your job and the reporters' jobs going, that obviously they might be doing a dance with somebody, because if there was no offer, wouldn't they just yank it, close up shop, and let Dean Singleton deal with the debt?